Welcome to Unaesthetically Speaking, the podcast where we explore what it really takes to build and sustain a beautiful brand. I'm your host, Juliana Mary. I am a product photographer and stylist, and I've worked with brands worldwide that are focused and dedicated to building something beautiful online. I'm starting this podcast for a couple of reasons, and the foremost is because even though I create beautiful content, my whole brand, my livelihood is based around making something look flawless. My real life isn't. And even behind the scenes of my business isn't. It's messy, it's chaotic, it's creative. If you're watching this video, you can see behind me that my studio is a pit of chaos. I've got props and backdrops and stuff from my family, posters my kids made. It is all happening all the time, but you never see that in the finished product. What you see is a perfectly curated Instagram feed. What you see is a beautifully styled and edited final product photo. And I think what's really important to communicate and to remember is that life doesn't look like that. And when you're starting off building a business, or maybe you're 5 years in, 10 years in, 20 years in, you compare yourself to these other businesses and these other brands and these other people that you truly admire. And you think, they have it all together. Look at them on Instagram every single day with their makeup on, their super cool outfit. Their house looks perfect. I can't post anything because I don't look like that. Because my home doesn't look like that, because my creative space is a mess. And I think it's really important to draw back that curtain and say, you know what? That's not real. I mean, for some people it might be. I don't know. Maybe there are truly perfect type A people out there. I know a couple, and then, yeah, their homes are always perfect. But if you are a creative and you are a business owner, there are probably a few things about you that are like me. You may or may not have ADHD. I go back and forth on all the time on if I think I have it. I've never been tested or diagnosed, but there are some clues like my space behind me that make me think maybe I do. You probably have a million ideas running through your head at any given moment. And that isn't always perfect looking. But just because, or maybe because of those things, you have these big creative dreams. You are building something incredible. And yes, it can look really beautiful, but it can also look behind the scenes chaotic. So, what does it take behind the scenes to build that brand, to sustain that brand? And how can we merge those two ideas of perfection on the outside, because we need people to want to buy our things, right? Want to buy our products and our services. And to do that, we do need to present a certain way online, but also bringing in that authenticity of who we really are, what our lives really look like, and share with others in our space that this is normal. At least I hope it's normal. I mean, you can even see if you're watching this video, man, I use my hands to talk a lot and my nails are chipped and I need a manicure desperately. But real life doesn't always allow for those things. So that's what this podcast is about. And also getting into the more detailed strategies of, okay, the end result looks super beautiful, right? The Instagram feed is perfectly curated. Well, what does it take to get to that point where you have that beautifully curated Instagram feed? What are the strategies of posting every day? What types of captions are we writing? How do we balance out creating this beautiful image online while also letting people know the real authentic people behind the brand? Because that is so important in today's world. You cannot just show up online and think, oh, if I create this beautiful Instagram feed, that's it. That's all I need. Because that's not true anymore. It might have been true in, the 2000s, like 2010. I think all you might have only needed a beautiful Instagram feed, but now you need so much more to build that brand and sustain your business because people aren't interested in perfection. They're interested in the behind the scenes. So what is it really like? What really goes into making this product? What really goes into this person's creative process? That's what they want to see. So how do we share that? While maintaining our brand. Because when you have an aesthetically driven business, for example, as a product photographer, my Instagram feed is my portfolio. I can't just post a bunch of random shots of my office looking this because when somebody comes across that, they are going to take that as my aesthetic, as what they can expect to get from me. So I have to make sure that when they see my Instagram feed or my website, that it looks a certain way so that they'll want to work with me and hire me because that is my portfolio. However, for them to get to know and like and trust me, they also have to see some of the chaos behind the scenes. And so finding that balance is really important. I have an incredible lineup of guests coming on the podcast, and these are a combination of people I have met along the way on my business journey, coaches that I've had in the past in the photography world, and stylists that I have long admired and thought, man, if I could just look like their business, if I could just do what they do the way that they do it. And what I've learned over time is, of course, you should never try to replicate what somebody else does, but take inspiration from them. So the lineup is incredible. I have so many guests that I'm excited about. And I thought, let me share a little bit about who I am before I jump into interviewing all these incredible people. So I got started back in it was around 2012, 2013. I had just gotten married and I was working at a law office. It was a weird kind of configuration. It was a leadership consulting firm that was part of a law office. And I was I was their marketing person. And it was me and these leadership development coaches. And then I was also getting trained on how to one day become a leadership development coach as well. So if you can imagine, we worked with really big companies all around the state, all around the Midwest, actually, providing these like how to do public speaking, how to be effective in meetings, how to tell a great story to get your point across. Um, Really kind of these like key tools you needed if you were going to be a leader in one of these big companies. And so it was an incredibly formal environment, very serious. I had to wear a suit and high heels every day, hair done, makeup on, clock in, very structured. And what I quickly discovered was that was not an environment in which I thrived. I had had other jobs before in corporate environments, similar types of expectations with timesheets and clocking in, clocking out, wearing a certain dress code. And I would always get in trouble um, for kind of pushing what was allowed. And I never thought I did anything too crazy, but in these very formal worlds, it was. So I would wear blue nail polish. Or I used to love like really quirky big rings. So I had one that was like an elephant or, just like different stuff that I would get in trouble with HR over. Or I'll never forget the day I wore, the scandal, capri dress pants. Now keep in mind, these were from, J. Crew or something. And I literally got called into HR because my ankles were showing. So this is the type of environment that I was working in. Now, the one with the capri dress pants, I did get fired from that job. That was working at a health insurance company. And I got fired not because of my dress code, for some other reasons involving my timesheet and my inability to fill that goddamn thing off incorrectly. It was the bane of my existence. There were so many forms all the time to amend things and change things. And if you ever wanted to do anything differently, it was like a whole rigmarole. Anyway, I got fired from that job, started this other job at this law firm. And while I was working at the leadership development firm, I actually really loved a lot of parts of that job. I loved the public speaking aspect. I loved the coaching aspect of it. I learned a lot, which was great. And I can utilize those things now in my business. But I was so unhappy. I had a windowless office. It was actually a closet that they had converted for me into an office. And I would, during, slow times of the day, during my lunch period, I started learning graphic design. And Etsy was really just kind of taking off at this point. And I was thinking, gosh, maybe I could start like an Etsy shop and I could sell, I don't know, prints or something. So I downloaded fonts and graphics and illustrations and all these things and started making little posters. And then one day I saw on Pinterest, somebody had reposted a contest that they had entered to win a spot in a calligraphy workshop with Molly Jakes. And Molly was the like original modern calligraphy person. She kind of, I don't know if she invented that style, but if she didn't invent it, she was at the very beginning of it. So I entered this contest and somehow I won. I don't know how. And the workshop happened to be in Grand Rapids, which was incredible. So, well, that's where I was living at the time. So I won this workshop. I went to go learn calligraphy and I loved it. And what I started to think was, okay, I've got these like sort of semi graphic design skills. I'm learning calligraphy. Maybe I can sell, prints. I can sell original artwork. Maybe I can do calligraphy for weddings. Maybe I can do envelopes and stuff. So I started doing that. And then I thought, if I can do this, maybe I can do wedding invitations. So I started designing wedding invitations. And I started selling those on Etsy. I had a few friends order from me, and then I had some strangers order from me, which was super exciting. But the biggest challenge I faced was I couldn't get a good picture of my stationery. So I would try doing it myself, like with my cell phone, and I had no idea what I was doing, and my photos were terrible. So then I thought, okay, I'll use mock-ups, right? I had seen kind of some online on Etsy and Creative Market, and so I bought some mock-ups. And I put my stationery design on the mock-up, and that was fine. But at the time, there were only a handful of decent mock-ups available, and everybody was using the same ones. So it was really hard to stand out when your brand looks like everybody else's. So I thought, okay, I really got to figure out how to take my own photos here. So I started practicing. I found a couple of people who were teaching about this kind of stuff. Just via YouTube. One of them, her name is Emma Natter, and she was teaching about flat lay styling and photos for branding. And so I watched her YouTube, and later I worked with her as she was my business coach when I first got started. And then I found another woman. Her name is Megan Gonzalez. She's going to be coming on the podcast in a few episodes. And she had sort of she was a stationer and got into styling. And so I took some courses from her. And I started practicing and learning interior design and floral design and color theory and all these things to try. Oh, and photography, of course, to try and figure out how to get good photos. And I was still working just with my phone and started posting these photos. And then I started thinking, gosh, you know what? We really need more mock-ups in the world for us stationers. So I started taking mock-up photos, again, just using my phone and selling them on Creative Market. And I actually got my first client that way. Somebody emailed me through Creative Market saying, hey, we like these mock-ups. Can you create mock-ups for our business? It's like, yes. And keep in mind, I didn't even own a professional camera at this point. So I asked them for a deposit. I didn't charge nearly enough for that project because it was my first one. I didn't know what I was doing. So I took that deposit money and took some money from My husband was closing out his law business and, took a few $100 and bought a digital camera. And that was the start of my styling and photography business. Over time, of course, I dropped doing stationery and calligraphy altogether from my business and started focusing solely on stationery, styling, and photography, and then grew into doing other types of product photography. And I love what I do so much. I'm so grateful every day for all of those experiences along the way that led me here. Because I really don't think, if I hadn't gotten fired from that job at that health insurance company, I would have tried really hard to stay there and work my way up. And then, same with that law office leadership development job. If I hadn't been so unhappy there, I wouldn't have started daydreaming about something else. And then I had another job after that working at an art museum that I actually loved. I loved that job. It was challenging, but the pay was horrible. And if you work in nonprofit, um, truly, my take home pay every 2 weeks was like a few $100s. It was just abysmal. But that kept me doing this side hustle, right? Because I had to earn some extra income. So I kept learning how to hone my skills as a stationer and trying to look for creative opportunities on how to make some money so that I could support my family and contribute. And then one day we moved. My husband got a job across the state. And so I quit my job that I liked, even though it made me no money. And we moved across the state. And then I was at this real crossroads where I had to decide, okay, either I am going to pursue this thing full time or I'm going to look for a job. And I couldn't find any jobs that sounded interesting. And I had learned what kind of jobs I did not thrive in. So I was like, you know what? We're just going to do this thing full time. We're just going to go for it. And my sweet mama at the time, I had a lot of people in my life who were saying, oh no, get a job and then do this thing as a side hustle. And, that's the safe way to do it. And my mom said, screw that. She said, just go for it. You get one life. Just go for it. And so that's what I did. And, now it's 6 years later and I have a thriving business. I have a new podcast. And I get to work with amazing people from all over the world. I have faced, so one question that I'm going to be asking a lot of my guests are about challenges or setbacks that they've faced in their personal or professional life. What was the situation? How did it impact your business? And I'm just going to dive deep into it real fast. I've had a lot of challenges, and I think every business owner does, a lot of the smaller ones. Making, just really fumbling up a client's shoot, or in those early days. And when I say fumble, I mean, it just didn't turn out how I expected, or how I dreamt. Luckily, I've never had a client say, oh my gosh, this was awful. But I have had clients who have never come back, from those early days when I was just learning how to do things. And I think that's just part of the experience, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you kind of learn by trial and error. There's no one who can tell you exactly how to do something because no one's done it before, or at least never done it how you're doing it. And so you can't find advice online on some very specific things. So you just figure it out as you go. But I think the biggest challenge I've faced was last year when my mom passed away. And the impact that had, of course, on my personal life was monumental, life-changing in every sense of the word. And the impact that it had on my business was also monumental. So my mom was diagnosed. It was Easter weekend of 2023. She wasn't feeling well. She was really tired. And to the point where she couldn't, make herself breakfast. It was just too exhausting. So she checked herself into the ER. where they found a huge tumor called a sarcoma that was growing around her, I guess, main aorta to her heart. It was crowding out her lungs and her organs, which was causing her to get winded really quickly. And of course, it's one of the rarest types of cancer. Less than 5,000 people a year get diagnosed with this type of cancer. And out of that type of cancer, she had the most aggressive kind, already stage 4 by the time they found it. And she passed away within, I think it was just barely 4 weeks from finding the tumor. So it all happened really fast. And my mom was my best friend and supporter. And so when she passed away, I fell into a really deep depression that I couldn't put into words because I didn't know. I'd never experienced anything so devastating before. And I've lost people in my life. I've lost friends. I've lost grandparents, but nothing like this. And if you've lost a parent, I think you'll understand that it's the shittiest club you never want to be a part of, but that we all join at some point, which is awful. But I couldn't work. I didn't want to work. I didn't see it was almost like I didn't see the point of it. I just couldn't get the motivation, the creativity, the drive to keep doing anything. And so I had all these client shoots lined up because, of course, we had no idea that this was going to be happening. And I couldn't do any of it. And so I had to email all of my clients and just say, I'm sorry, I can't do this work for you right now. I hope, you're okay with rescheduling. And what was incredible was 90% of them said, no problem. Great. I'm so sorry for your loss. Take all the time you need. Get back to us when you can. But the impact that had and continues to have on my business was eye-opening in so many ways, not just for the the setback part of it, the oh my gosh, now I have to tell these people I can't do their work. Oh no, the financial struggle that came along with not working. But on the, if there is a silver lining, if there is a positive side, this is it. I deeply learned through that experience that life is so short. And we are not here for a long time. So why not go for the big dreams, go for the audacious goals for fun? It doesn't really matter. And I know that sounds kind of funny, right? Because it does matter. It matters in your life. It matters for your overall, experience. And hopefully it matters to the people who care for you and that you're impacting somebody else's life in some way. But ultimately, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. If you go for this big crazy thing, it doesn't matter if it works or if it doesn't. It's just about the journey. And, I know there's a ton of sayings about that, about, oh, it's the journey, it's not the destination. But it's actually true. And that didn't occur to me until I went through this devastating loss. And so now when I approach my business, I don't approach it from this place of hustle as much as I do from a place of curiosity and of fun. Of how can we make this work? What if we did it like this? Now it's just a lot more about the joy of doing it, about the excitement of seeing if something can work and what will happen if. And I hope that by sharing that story, I don't want to make my first episode a major bummer, but I hope by sharing that story, if you've gone through something similar, you can take something away from it. And if you haven't, thank God for you. I wish nobody had to go through it. But I hope you can take that lesson that I had to learn that way and implement it in your life now. Because you can get a jump start on just living this big, beautiful life without having to go through the hardship first. One thing I'd really like everyone to know about building a beautiful brand. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, part of my success of my career relies on how I'm presenting my brand online, on how I am showing up on my Instagram feed. But what I want people to know is that it's okay, and more than okay, it's just normal to be yourself, to show up in a messy space. The important part is to show up. So don't wait to have something look perfect before you act on it. Don't wait till it's just so before you share it online. Don't hold yourself back from pursuing something because it doesn't look like somebody else's version of perfection. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to have the business of your dreams. And people will connect with you because of your, I don't want to say authenticity, but because of your authenticity, because of who you are. People will connect with you because of you. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. You don't have to try to look a certain way. You don't have to try to present yourself as something else that you perceive as successful. Because ultimately it doesn't matter, right? Like I was talking about before. Ultimately, the goal is to have fun, to experience the beauty of life. And that can only come with going for your dreams, putting yourself out there, and, having some bravery when it comes to that. And so that's what I would like every entrepreneur to know about building a beautiful brand, is that it doesn't have to be beautiful in this like traditional aesthetic sense. It's beautiful because of you. It's beautiful because of you. Okay? And I'm telling you that just as much as I'm reminding myself of that. The world needs your voice. The world needs your creativity. And all you have to do is put yourself out there and share it, because the world is ready and needs to hear it and is waiting to hear it. There are people out there waiting to find you, waiting to hear about you, waiting to hear about your business. So just show up. Give them that. And give it to yourself too. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, for listening. I hope that it was insightful. I hope that you're able to take something away from my experiences. And I cannot wait to welcome you back for episode 2. We have so many incredible guests lined up for this podcast, and to learn from their experiences and their insights. And I can't wait. I'm just so excited. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.